Alright, son. Time to go to bed now.
But Dad, I'm not even tired yet.
But it's late already. And I have to get up early tomorrow to go to work.
Alright, Dad, but first read me a story.
Let's get you tucked in. It's kind of late already, buddy. How about I read your story tomorrow instead?
Please, tonight.
Alright then.
Yay. Oh, could you read me a cool architecture story? I want to be an architect like you one day.
Sure. Let's read about... How about the High Renaissance in Florence?
Okay, Dad.
Alright.
A long time ago, there was the very powerful and influential Medici family in Italy. Their wealth and influence was initially derived from the textile trade and later established Europe's largest bank. Like other governing families of the time, they dominated their city's government. They were able to bring Florence under their family's power, and they created an environment where art and humanism could flourish. They, along with other families of Italy, fostered and inspired the birth of what we know now as the Italian Renaissance.
Dad, what's the Italian Renaissance, and what does it have to do with architecture?
Well, son, how about we keep on reading and find out what it's all about?
Okay, but this better be interesting.
The Italian Renaissance was the earliest manifestation of High Renaissance, a period of great cultural change and achievement that began in Italy during the 14th century and lasted until the 16th century, marking the transition between medieval and early modern Europe. The High Renaissance period is traditionally taken to begin in the 1490s with Leonardo's fresco of the Last Supper in Milan and the death of Leonardo de' Medici in Florence, and to have ended in 1527 with the sacking of Rome by the troops of Charles V. That period today is best known for Italian Renaissance art and architecture. The period saw major achievements in literature, music, philosophy, and other arts, as well as science. Italy became the recognized European leader in all these areas by the late 15th century, and to some degree retained this lead until about 1600. This was despite a turbulent period in Italian politics, in the course of which most of Italy was carved up by major European powers. The European Renaissance began in Tuscany, central Italy, and centered in the city of Florence, where the Medici family governed.
Wow, the Medici family did all that?
Well, not alone, but they were a big contributing factor in this Renaissance period.
Okay, we should talk about architecture now.
Okay, let's keep reading.
In Florence alone, the Italian Renaissance influenced so many architectural masterpieces. One example of these marvelous architectural masterpieces is the Laurentian Library. The Laurentian Library is a historical library in Florence, Italy, and it was built to emphasize that the Medici family were no longer mere merchants, but members of an intelligent and ecclesiastical society. It contains the manuscripts and books belonging to the private library of the Medici family. The library is renowned for the architecture planned and built by Michelangelo. The Laurentian Library was commissioned in 1523, and construction began in 1525. However, when Michelangelo left to Florence in 1534, only the walls of the reading room were complete. It was then continued by Tribolo, Vasari, and Amanati, based on plans and verbal instructions from Michelangelo. The library opened in 1571, and it is considered one of Michelangelo's most important architectural achievements. Even Michelangelo's contemporaries realized the innovations and use of space in the Laurentian Library were revolutionary. The two-story Quattrocentro cloister to remain unchanged by the addition of the library. Because of this, certain features of Michelangelo's plan, such as the length and width, were already laid out. Therefore, walls were built on already pre-existing walls and cloisters. Because the walls were built on pre-existing walls, recessing the columns into walls was a structural necessity. This also led to a unique style pattern that Michelangelo takes advantage of.
Let me see the pictures, Dad. So cool. Wow.
Another example of a Renaissance-inspired architectural masterpiece is Uffizi. The Uffizi Gallery is a prominent art museum located adjacent to the Piazza della Signoria in central Florence, region of Tuscany, Italy. The building of Uffizi complex was began by Giorgio Vasari in 1560 for Cosimo I de' Medici, so as to accommodate the offices of Florentine magistrates, hence the name Uffizi, offices. The construction was later continued by Alfonso Pagiri and Bernardo Bontablenti and completed in 1581. The cortile, internal courtyard, is so long and narrow and open to the Arno at its far end through a Doric screen that articulates the space without blocking it, that architectural historians treat it as the first regularized streetscape of Europe. Vasari, a painter and architect as well, emphasized its perspective length by the matching facades, continuous roof cornices, and unbroken cornice between stories and the three continuous steps on which the palace fronts stands. The niches and the piers that alternate with columns filled with sculptures of famous artists throughout the century.
Oh, that's awesome, Dad.
Yeah. And my favorite one is...
Dad, I'm kind of sleepy now.
Well, you know what? Let me read you about this last one. It's my favorite one. The Vasari Corridor. Yeah?
Okay.
The Vasari Corridor is an elevated enclosed passageway in Florence in which connects the Palazzo Vecchio with the Palazzo Pitti. It is a covered walk almost a kilometer in length. An overhead passageway that starts out from the west corridor of the gallery, heads up towards the Arno, and then raised up by huge arches, follows the river as far as the Ponte Vecchio. Beginning on the south side of the Palazzo Vecchio, it then joins the Uffizi Gallery and leaves on its south side, crossing the Lungario dei Archibusieri, and then following the north bank of the river Arno until it crosses the Ponte Vecchio. The corridor then snakes its way over rows of houses in the Oltrarno district, becoming narrower, to finally join the Palazzo Pitti. Most of it is enclosed to visitors. The Vasari Corridor was built in 5 months by the order of Duke Cosimo I de' Medici in 1565 to design of Giorgio Vasari. It was commissioned in connection with the marriage of Cosimo's son, Francesco, with Joanna of Austria. Vasari thus created a monumental urban pathway that took the absolute power of the ruler right into the historic heart of the city. The idea of an enclosed passageway was motivated by the Grand Duke's desire to move freely between his residence and the government palace when, like most monarchs of the period, he felt insecure in public. In his case especially because he had replaced the Republic of Florence.
Man, you see, this is why it's my favorite, because of this powerful Duke, how he went out of his way to create something so marvelous out of fear. It was intended as a safe haven. Want to see pictures? You're gonna make a great architect one day, buddy. Good night.